everyone, I am Bhargavi working as Assistant Professor in from the Department of Information Technology, B.V. Raju Institute of Technology in Narsapur. So today my topic is on user-defined exception. So what is a user-defined exception? So Python is allowing us to create a user-defined exceptions. We can create our own exceptions that can be raised in our program, and those can be caught by using a except class. So if there is, in some situations, we may come across with the different errors. So to catch those kind of errors, it may not have any inbuilt exception. Then programmer need to write their own exceptions which are raising in a program and has to caught in the except class. So the raise keyword helps us to use it to raise the exception. Raise keyword helps us to raise the exception, and it will specifies what kind of error is occurring, what kind of error is raising, and the corresponding message what we need to print to the user that we need to mention in the raise. So most of the exceptions were named with at the end we are naming with error, like we have already there in the inbuilt exceptions. So user-defined exceptions are also called as a custom exception. So Python is allowing us to create our own customized exceptions. The name given for the exception is depends on a programmer. So the programmer can give any name to the user-defined exception, but that need to be mentioned in the except class. And some programmers were following that while writing a user-defined exception, the name is ending with an error, like built-in exceptions. And generally, built-in exception has zero division error, attribute error. So likewise, they are following same format for creating user-defined exception also. So how to define a user-defined exceptions or custom exceptions? So we can define a custom exceptions by creating a new class that must be derived from the built-in exception class. See here, class custom error is my user-defined exception name, and it must be derived from a built-in exception. And whatever the functionalities, modules we need to write, we can write it inside a class, and whatever the raising exception, those code need to be written in the try block, and the corresponding custom error, corresponding customized user-defined exception must be mentioned in the except class. Here the custom error is a user-defined error, user-defined exception that must be inherited from the exception class, the base class. So what is the syntax? See here, I have created my exception class. My exception is my name, and that must be derived from the base class exception. So you can add the additional functionalities and the customized behavior for your exceptions by adding their methods and attributes to our customized class. So here whatever the modules, functions we need to write, functions, attributes we can write in our own exception class. So here is an example. So here first I have created a function of def numbers and I passed two values a comma b. So if b equals to 0, so I am telling to raise an exception. So here is a raise keyword, raise space. I am giving my exception name, that is a user-defined exception. This is user-defined exception. And this is a message. I just want to print to the user, cannot divide by 0. So this is what raise. And this def divide numbers is a function. That function has to return type is a by b. So whatever the numbers, two numbers we are passing, it has to return division of that number. So if some cases, if a b is a 0, it will raise a 0 division error. So that reason already I am raising exception, raise my exception, and the message I need to pass to the user is cannot divide by 0. So in a try block I am writing that risky code, result is equals to divide numbers. I am calling the function, this is a calling function. I am calling a function and passing the values of 10, 0. Here b is 0, definitely it will raise 0 division error. So whenever b is 0, it will raise this exception. The corresponding exception need to be caught in the except class. The corresponding exception need to be caught in the exception class. Exception space my exception as e. E is something which will give print. E is something it will print a message of cannot divide by 0. So it will print, if I pass 10, 0, it will print error is raised, error is occurred, so it cannot divide by 0. So you are providing a 0. So such kind of information I am giving to the user. So I have created my own exception of my exception. So here is another example. So here on the class starting, so user defined exceptions were created by using a class. So I have written my exception, and it must be, every user defined exception must be derived from the base class, that is exception. Okay. So here something I have printed, we are discussing about exceptions. So I have taken a dictionary. That is a bank. Bank is holding name and money. So name is the key here, money is the value here. See here, Ram is the key and 5,000 money is the value. So here I am writing exception. So whose account is having less than 2,000, so it has to raise an exception. So those risky code I have written in a try block. For K comma V in bank.items print. So I need to print keys and values in this format. If the values are less than 2,000, whose value is less than 2,000, raise my exception. Raise my exception. If I am doing this raise my exception, they should have a corresponding except block. So in the except block, it will go whenever it raises exception, it goes to the except block. The same name should be written here and here. So our balance amount is less in the account of a above customer. So whenever it is executed around 5,000 is greater than 2,000. So no problem. Whenever it reads the value of a 300, immediately it raises exception, my exception. Then corresponding exception need be caught by the except class. What is there in the except class? It is printing some information to the user. So that information will be printed on the console. Balance amount is less in the account of above customer. Above customer is a 300. So except class, we write our exceptions to quote the exceptions, as well as we write some information to print to the user. So this is another example for defining a user defined exceptions. So this is about an invalid age for giving vote. So I have taken a class name as invalid age exception that must be derived from the base class exception. So here raise when the input value is less than 18, it has to raise an exception. That is my criteria. So first, I am not writing anything in a class. If we not write anything in a class, definitely it will raise an error. So that we need to mention a pass. So now number is equals to 18 I have taken. So the risky code I am writing in a try block where I may chance to get an error if the entered number is not greater than 18. If it is less than 18, I may get a chance of raising an error. That error code I have written in a try block. So through keyboard I am entering the values input of entered number. If the user entered number is less than the given number, here in the number is having 18. If that is less than, it has to raise invalid age exception. If it is raising, then the corresponding except block will there. So what is the message it need to print? Exception occurred, invalid age. If the entered value is 45, then obviously there is no issue of this raising error exception. The corresponding else block will print forget the eligible to vote. If a user entered 410, then it will raise the invalid age exception and go to the corresponding except block. And what is the message in the except block that is going to print to the programmer? Exception occurred because of invalid age. Here the constraint is n equals to 8. So likewise we can create our own exceptions, and each and every user defined exception must be derived from the base class, that is the exception. The syntax is must. And inside we can write whatever we want. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.